It has often been said that birds of a feather flock together. While this phrase may seem like a cliche to many, it is actually a common sight in Singapore. Of course, we're not talking about birds here, but rather foreigners living in Singapore.
Whenever I step out of the MRT, a lot of Filipino mates or Indonesian mates, they'll just be there at the MRT stations. They'll be on the staircase, sitting there, sitting on the floor. And when you go out, they'll be sitting on the ledge. So it's kind of crowding. Yeah, so it's sometimes very irritating in a sense because they're just everywhere. And especially at night, also when you go to like Little India, the Bangladeshis will be around on the roads. And for drivers, it's very, very difficult for them to drive past.
Some foreigners from certain countries stick together a lot and they don't really mix well, but some other foreigners from other countries are more sociable. If they don't want to mix around, at the end of the day, they're the one losing out. So, and mixing around doesn't hurt anyone. And if they do mix around, they learn more stuff about the local people, culture, and it's easier for them to fit in also if they mix around.
She said that mixing around with the locals will help foreigners fit in better with the society they're in. But is that really the case? Today we investigate if mingling with the locals or sticking to your own community is the better way for foreigners to cope with homesickness.
Stick with my own community. We from the same country and we speak the same language. That's more easy.
I may prefer to stick to the Chinese communities because we share more the same thing on the food.
Actually, I feel a lot better with Filipino friends. Although I've known a lot of local friends as well, but being with Filipinos is definitely a lot different.
To cope with homesickness, I would say it helps to mix. Maybe with both. I guess the expat can relate to a lot of my feelings.
Singapore attracts foreign nationals from all over the world, and although we do see them around, few of us know that they represent 1 million out of Singapore's 4.68 million. That's more than 20% of our population. Living away from home and in a different cultural milieu, foreign nationals often feel a sense of loneliness and homesickness. According to social psychologist Van Tilburg, homesickness is the commonly expressed state of distress amongst those who have left their homes and found themselves in a new and unfamiliar environment. To overcome homesickness, foreign nationals need to develop new social networks for support and friendship. Many choose to do that by searching for friends from their home countries, causing a very severe case of segregation. Places like Tanglin Mall and Holland Village are known to be frequented by the Caucasian community, whereas on weekends, Filipinos and Indonesians can be seen crowding around Orchard Road. But is this sort of congregation the best way to get over homesickness?
My name is Jeremy and I live here in Singapore with my wife Annabelle and son William. We have been in Singapore for 2.5 years almost, and she works for Tan Tock Seng Hospital and I work for DHL Express, the courier people. We mix with a variety of people. When we came to Singapore, we wanted to mix with more Singaporeans, but it's less easy to meet people except the people you work with. The people I work with are from all countries, not just Singapore. So we have a variety of friends, but not exclusively Singaporeans. We don't seek out other New Zealanders. We haven't joined any association or anything. I work with a couple of New Zealanders, but that would be okay if I didn't.
We actually don't know many other New Zealanders in Singapore, and in general we tend not to seek out other New Zealanders. An interesting aspect of living in a foreign country is mixing with a diverse range of people, so we try to do this actually as much as possible.
most our social activity is focused around our son, and so we do lots of family activities like going for walks, and sometimes we eat lunch out or we have friends over for lunch. So we have quite limited social activities now, but that's okay because we want to focus on our family. If you go overseas and you want to cope with homesickness, it might be a good idea to meet more with people from your own country. But if you want to integrate into the society where you're studying or living, it's much better to meet with local people, or else you might never get over your homesickness and therefore not want to stay wherever you're visiting.
Okay, I'm from Sweden, from a very small town southwest of Sweden. It's not that many people, so it's quite countryside-wise. I mean, of course, I miss my friends sometimes, but it's not that I want to go back to Sweden. Then I'll also miss probably the privacy, as I was brought up in the countryside. It was a lot of space, have a few neighbors only, and you can do almost anything you want. Usually if you stick with your own countrymen, then you feel more homesick. Because you have still things in common. So then if you meet your native or your people, then I believe that you get more from Sweden, and then you get more homesick. So when I do stay with local people, I adopt the Singaporean way of doing things, and then you get used to it quite fast. So then it's not a big deal to be here, actually, in that sense.
Yeah, I first came into Singapore. I came to Singapore when I was in Sec 2. I had problems fitting in because I guess I was just homesick. Yeah, and I didn't have so many friends back then.
Zen is an Indonesian student living in Singapore. For those who don't know him personally, it is hard to tell Zen apart from any other Singaporean student. Although he's only been here 4 years, he has immersed himself very well in the Singaporean culture. Here, Zen and his local friend discuss some of the differences in culture and difficulties foreigners face.
Okay, I think for me personally, Singaporeans are very open to mixing with foreigners. But I guess some of them will find quite a bit of difficulty mixing with those foreigners who can't really master the language, as in can't really speak up English well. So yeah, I think that's the main crux.
I think that the differences aren't as much as I think there would be, because like as in you have the stereotypes of like foreigners, they're gonna be very different, but I think it's less so. As in culturally, there are some, as in, the practices are different and everything, but they're not so much because you're Indonesian. It could be more of like religious and all of that as well. But like when they just came from like when you're fresh from your own country, then it'll be harder lah.
But I guess when you start mixing up with the locals, you start to see yourself as one of the people living in Singapore. As in you start to, I don't know, familiarize yourself with the surroundings, and then maybe that's one point that can help you deal with homesickness as well. Yeah.
To overcome homesickness, foreign nationals build up a network of familiar shops, clubs, people, and places that they frequent. Many choose to stick in their own communities because it provides them comfort and familiarity. However, to truly break out of homesickness, foreigners eventually have to learn how to integrate with the local people and culture.